while that's a topic that I'm concerned about, I must also, in the same breath, say that I'm somewhat reassured by some of the more recent announcements, particularly in the two-wheeler space. Both Bajaj and TVS have recently announced all-electric vehicles. Bajaj with their e-Chetak and TVS with their iQ. What's most reassuring is that these products, both manufacturers have proudly stated that these are all designed in India and built in India with Indian components. If this is a practice that spreads, I think hopefully we can stave off. It's true that the two-wheeler industry in India has done the country prouder than our four-wheeler or commercial vehicle industry in terms of having created global brand image and globally competitive products. So if other manufacturers will take on this tack, I think we will be in good shape. And of course, there is the wonderful thing about India is this younger generation. There is so much energy and passion in the younger generation, and with the startups that are coming up, Ether is an example. Their products are something that any Indian can be proud of, and again, almost completely Indian. So we need to make sure that those manufacturers are indeed encouraged and that they are indeed successful in taking the fight to Chinese manufacturers and making sure that we are able to protect the industry. There's another big aspect related to electrification. We think nothing about the amount of energy that is sold today in all of the petrol pumps. But if you think about even a good fraction of our two-wheelers and buses becoming electric by, say, 2025, 26, not more than 25, 30%, it still means that in India, if we want to make our own batteries, we will have to create battery production capacity of the order of something like 30 to 40 gigawatt hours. To set that number in perspective, today the global capacity for electric vehicle batteries is about 30 to 40 gigawatt hours. And that includes the Tesla Gigafactory, it includes all of the Chinese factories. So 30 to 40 gigawatt hours is the annual capacity across the globe today. If we want even 30 to 40% of two-wheelers and buses to be electric by 2025-26 in India, India will require battery capacity of 30 to 40 gigawatt hours. And it's not inexpensive. Maruti is going to put up a 1 gigawatt hour battery plant at a cost of 5,000 crores. So even if you assume that with efficiency and scale, you can bring it down to 1,000 crores per gigawatt hour, 30 to 40 gigawatt hour capacity is going to require a very significant 30 to 40,000 crores. That's a lot of investment we're going to have to make in that space. Now to address the last section of mobility, the fact is, India is one of the most densely populated countries in the world, and particularly when you take our major cities, each of our cities, if you count the number of cities that house more than 1 million population, we have so many of them. And we're all facing this issue of, road capacity is completely inadequate for the vehicle population that we have. We all talk about congestion, we talk about the inefficiencies. Well, this factor alone of congestion and perhaps the immediate side effects of this, whether it's air quality, whether it is health effects, even accidents and fatalities, they consume anywhere between 3 and 6% of a country's GDP. So that is the friction we have in our current system, and it's only going to get worse. In Delhi alone, IIT Delhi did a study where they said the Gurgaon-Noida corridor and the congestion there, that congestion alone accounts for 1.8% of that region's GDP. So we're going to have to pay a very heavy price to sustain this kind of, let alone the health effects. The second issue is allocation of space. Two examples. A city like Tokyo allocates 15% of urban real estate to roads. A city like Dallas allocates 40% of its urban real estate to roads. So we're going to ask the question, how much land do you want to allocate Chennai? And frankly, the answer is if we are going to continue to have low density, which means low high rises, not many high rises, and we're going to sprawl. Look at Chennai now. We're sprawling all the way to Mahindra City on one end, Gumdipundi on the other. We're sprawling at a pace that is taking us headlong into the model of a Dallas or a Los Angeles. And these are the kinds of cities that have the most inefficient mobility systems. They have the worst traffic congestion, they have the worst air quality, and the worst economic losses. We can't afford that. And we're going to have to find a way to house and transport a lot more people much more efficiently going forward. And this means we have to address how we plan our cities and how we plan the mobility architecture that is going to help the cities. Fortunately, today we are having an explosion of opportunities and options. The smartphone has come in and provided us so many ways of getting connected, whether you want to get an Uber, you want to get the timetable. There's so many ways of making a journey from point A to point B. And as Anand Raghavan indeed said, you probably will wake up 5 years from now saying, today, for this journey, what am I going to do? And your journey will be tailored for each journey once at a time, and not just a standard question of saying, I've got my car and my driver and I step in and I go where I want. And I think we will realize, Enrique Peñalosa was a famous mayor of Bogota who was a champion for replanning urban mobility in cities. And he used to say, and he's even made the pitch to the commissioner of corporation commissioner here in Chennai, he said, please don't think that the sign of a developed country is one where even the poor people can go in a car. The sign of a developed country is one where the rich people take public transport. So, I mean, we're going to face that situation and we're going to have to plan to address that. And so this will have implications on peak car, so-called, just like we used to have the term peak oil, we will have a term peak car. In the US today, there's 800 cars per 1,000 households. In Europe, it's about 600 cars per 1,000 households. In India, by and large, we're at the sub 50 cars per 1,000 households. But certain cities, in fact, Bangalore is already getting up to 200, 250 cars per 1,000 households. If we are going to take the trajectory of these developed countries and follow their development trajectory, we'll have no place to put all those cars. And our quality of life will be horrendous. So we've got to start to already now think about a much more efficient way of moving people. After all, Japan has learned to live with a very high population density in all their cities. By all accounts, they have a very good quality of life. And there's no reason to believe that India can't have a better quality of life by having fewer cars in our cities. And so we will have to address a situation where there will be a flattening out not limited by affordability, as it was in the West, but a flattening out limited by the context of where we live and how we want to live. A few words about Chennai. I think, for me, this was home and this is home, and I have every hope that, Chennai will continue to be the lovely city that it is to all of us. We've earned, in some cases, I sometimes cringe, but when people say Chennai is the Detroit of the East, well, I don't know if we want that label. But if we do, it must be for the fact that we have a very strong, vibrant industry capable of providing products for the world, not just for us. And that is a reputation I hope we will continue to have. And whether it is with electric vehicles or whether it's with mobility solutions and technologies, I hope Chennai will remain an engine for future mobility and mobility solutions. As far as actually changing urban architecture, in the last 22 decades, population has grown by about 2x in Chennai. Vehicle population has grown 8x. And so this is going to be the challenge going forward. And we're going to have to find ways to encourage other modes to make them more attractive. In fact, Venu here has been a great champion and a supporter of the Chennai Metro Rail, and some of us now have followed his example. So I've now made 2 Chennai Metro Rail trips in the last 1 week, and frankly, I found them to be extremely relaxing. Of course, I have the luxury of being dropped at one metro station by one car and picked up by another car at the other station, but it is certainly making me a lot more ready for a time when I want to just say, I don't need the car, I will use a metro. Now, there's a lot of stuff that we have to do to make that approach, make that situation possible. We have to address accessibility right from everything as simple as pavements. Isn't it a shame? I had a recent talk at INTAC about Chennai and architecture, and for that talk, I had to retrieve from the archives a picture of Mount Road near the Buhari Corner, as I remember when I was a schoolboy. And when you pick up that picture, what do you find? You find broad pavements, you find barriers between the pavement and the road, you find a nice cycle path, you have pedestrian crossings with lights. Where have we lost all this? At a time when we need that more than ever, we seem to have completely forgotten the basic rules of designing cities and road infrastructure. So this is certainly going to come back to us. But as I said, Chennai has managed multiple technological revolutions in its stride, and I have every confidence that going forward we have the resilience, the resourcefulness, and the intelligence to navigate the steps ahead. So with those comments, let me close. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sumantran. We had a wonderful talk. And now it's questioning time. Kindly only question, no statements and lectures, please. Because that's what we have been having problem. So, whatever questions you have, please put it across to him and he will be ready to answer you. The mic is... The mic is there. You can address on the mic, please.
First question is not there. I'm Ram, part of the organizing team of the Triplicane Cultural Academy. Regarding this electrification of vehicles, what is the quantum of power that we may require in the next 5 years for the vehicles?
Okay.
No, I think the question is how will we generate the power we need to feed the electrification. I think I have no doubt that we are already on a roll with increasing power generating capacity. Now, I'm not yet ready to believe that we have power surplus states because that's a very misleading term. I think our per capita power consumption is still exceedingly low. But having said that, so much of our additional capacity coming on stream, a lot of that is becoming renewable. So, by the way, your question has many implications. It would do us no good to migrate to electrification if all we did was to continue to use only coal-fired plants to be able to achieve this electricity. But I'm confident that as we go forward, the basket of sources for power generation in India is increasingly becoming renewable, and that is indeed the right way to go.
Ramesh, Business Live. I think we are blessed with a splendid opportunity today to leapfrog this pathway of battery-driven electric vehicles straight into fuel cell-driven electric vehicles. But unfortunately, we don't seem to be paying any attention to fuel cell based. Even you, sir, did not mention hydrogen in your speech today. Are we doing the right thing? Don't we have an opportunity to do that? We don't have to follow the world.
Actually, if you notice what's happened with hydrogen energy and the hydrogen fuel cell in the car, there was this first wave of enthusiasm in the 1990s. GM promised a hydrogen economy. President Bush promised a hydrogen economy. Cars were coming out. We had Toyota and Honda cars that were fuel cell cars. And then the manufacturers themselves started to pull back. Now there is a second push back towards hydrogen. But this time around, my feeling is it is a more pragmatic approach to using hydrogen. The places where people are now looking to use hydrogen is for very energy dense application. If you have a long haul truck that you want to take from here to Pune, forget, you're never going to charge it enough, and you're going to have half a megawatt hour battery pack. Not practical. So hydrogen fuel cells are going to work in those kinds of environments. Also because the investment, now just imagine you've got a hydrogen fuel cell, you've got everything that you have in an electric vehicle, including a small battery, maybe a smaller battery. And you're going to add to this the cost of both a reformer and the fuel cell stack. So that's like adding two chemical factories on top of whatever is on the car already. So capital costs are still going to be an issue in terms of making it feasible for car owners. And that's the reason why I believe that you will see it more likely first show up in heavy energy dense applications. Another critical application that I see, I was at the MIT's Hydrogen Economy Symposium. The other area where hydrogen is beginning to look attractive is for people who want stationary power sources, where you can take advantage of lull in demand when you continue to have renewables available. So you take that extra available renewable power and use hydrogen basically like a battery. You're storing energy in hydrogen and then you're using it when you need it. And again, this has to be at scale. So this is going to be 5 megawatt units, 10 megawatt units, and so on. At the small scale, to put one in every car that has 100 kilowatt hours or kilowatts is today seemingly not capital efficient.
But technologists like you will crack it.
Well, we can't defy the laws of physics. We'll make progress, no doubt.
So I'm Professor Ramanathan, retired scientist from DRDO. Why can't we build road over road like in Bangkok? Because whatever we do, we are not going to reduce the number of vehicles on the road. It's going to increase, whether it's electrical vehicle or whatever other vehicle. So can't we look at it that way, road over road like in Bangkok?
Actually, there's a very famous transport scientist and planner called Eric Idland in the US. And he has this theory that is called the triple convergence. And the theory is that every time you build more road capacity, people's time of travel, mode of travel, and route of travel changes to clock that new highway. So we are unable to create more highway capacity to stay ahead of the game. And this is an experience in places like, LA is a classic case. LA is basically a carpet of highways with scattered housing and commercial complex along the way. And LA can't solve this problem. They can't build enough roads. And Bangkok's experience also has been that as they build a new road, the routes change, people's time of travel change, and their modal choices change, and they clog the new highways. So we will have to, and coming down to, again, a very physical view of the world, it cannot require a car to transport a single human being. A human being weighs 65 kilograms on average. We take that human being, and in India, we put them in a Maruti Swift, which weighs 1,300 kilograms, and say, I have a mobility solution. A 20x mass to transport a human being is itself not a fundamentally practical solution. So you've got to take that human being out of the car and put them either on a Segway or a motorcycle or a scooter or whatever it is, because that space and that mass can't be the basis of transporting a human being.
lithium, available lithium, going to slow down your EV progress? I believe it has been shown.
Well, it won't be just lithium alone. Lithium is an important element, but along with it, cobalt, a number of materials and rare earth materials for the motors. There will all be constraints. India is sadly neither are we as vibrant and moving forward as fast as the Californian side of the U.S. Nor are we so carefully planned and plotting our way as they do in China. China has made they've really cornered so many sources, critical sources, and the methods are sometimes unacceptable. What they've done in the Republic of Congo to corner critical mines for cobalt is rather shameful. But whatever is said and done, they've got access to these materials. We have a major challenge in being ready to secure supplies. It's one thing to say I'm going to make all those batteries in India by Indian companies with Indian investment. But unless we also, in parallel, secure those supply chains and supply lines, we will have a major problem, and that is a crucial issue.